And good evening, everyone. ESS, Empire State Sports, proudly presents the Wise Guys Sports Talk Show. Your host tonight, Joey Ream, Dave Bartlett, myself, Pete Gosel. Our very special guest, Hamilton College's head basketball coach, boys basketball coach, men's, Adam Stockwell. Adam, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Pete. Been looking forward to it.
All right, so Coach, we're diving into. I just did some research. We're diving into a conference that we haven't discussed on our show. A lot of SUNYAC talk on our show, but coaching in the NESCAC, and we'll talk a little bit about that in your league and everything a little bit later. But first off, let's let you introduce yourself to our followers and our viewers, and give us your pathway from as far back as you want to go, right back to high school if you want, and we'll kind of take it from there.
Yeah, sounds good. I appreciate you guys having me on, and I know listening to some of the shows, it's been fun, and like I was saying before, it's brought back a lot of names and memories that at my age I just don't remember often enough. So it's been fun to relive some of those stories and think about some of the things back in the day. For me, the North Country, it's kind of been most of my life. I grew up in Belleville, just south of Watertown. And, the legend of Belleville was Coach Tom Murphy and the undefeated streak for boys basketball in the late 60s and early 70s. So that's something that, I grew up around quite a bit. My father and uncles were part of those teams among some other people in the community. And one of my first basketball memories was going to the SUNY Canton basketball camp and going up there. And, like we all know, in those days, you actually had stations and were taught things, where now it's a lot of just show up and play, pick up and run around. But stations were a lot, and you had some games. And, I remember that camp, and I'm still bothered by it. There was a station there. We had X-out layup station, and Coach Tom Miller, and I don't remember what school he was at the time, maybe Edwards Knox or not, but he put out a bet to the campers that if you could make 8 X-out layups, start at the elbow, dribble in, make a right-handed layup, dribble to the left elbow, make a left-handed layup. If you could make 8, he'd buy you a sub. And dang it, I made 7. I missed a right-handed layup, and I'm still ticked I didn't get that sub. But that's one of the first things I remember being young is going to SUNY Canton, and then SUNY Potsdam camp with Coach Welsh and Coach Mitchell there at the time, and going up to see Steve Babiar's play. And, when I was younger, because Steve's obviously a lot older than I am, for sure. But it was great just seeing those games. And, I was fortunate to go play at Lemoyne and then play a season overseas in Northern Ireland. And after that, really been coaching for a long time now. Spent a year at Penn State Barron in Erie, Pennsylvania, Division III school with a great coach, Dave Nyland, who's also a Lemoyne alum. And that was a connection that afforded me the opportunity to get into coaching. And at that time, you didn't make much money and you had a lot of hats. I was the assistant basketball coach, head golf coach, co-intramural director, taught some classes, just did a little bit of everything. And I think washed his car and shined his shoes too, probably, but he just did everything at that time. And then Dave's connection with Mike McDonald at Canisius College. It was a great 5 years there, getting a chance to see what Division I was like. And that was really just a neat, rewarding experience, getting to travel different places. One of the years we played in the Great Alaska Shootout, which at the time was a pretty big tournament and showcase. Now there's a lot of them. Certainly we see over Thanksgiving and whatnot, but that was really just a neat experience. And, basketball is taking you places again. And then since then I've been head coach. I had 5 years at Clarkson, which was a tremendous learning experience for me. And first 2 years were really tough, and realized I wasn't nearly as good as I thought. I was a bad coach and had to figure this out a lot, and slowly got a little bit better. And we had some fun years at the end. And then 2 years at Oswego and the SUNYAC, which everybody knows is a great conference in New York. And then now going on my 12th year here at Hamilton and playing in the NESCAC, which probably hasn't helped my hairline or the color of my hair, but it's a lot of fun. It's a great conference with some great teams. And it's just really neat to see how great the level of play is at Division III for basketball. I think, unfortunately, sometimes people who don't follow the sport closely, like a lot of us do, they don't realize just how talented the players are. I pick on Steve Babiar's, but, there's a group of guys that get together and play, pick up once in a while in Utica, and he still plays. And if the game's on the line, I feel pretty confident Steve's going to knock me over with his shoulder and go score a bucket and win the game. Like he's that good. And there's a lot of guys at Division III that are similar to that. They're just really high level players and could compete with anybody in the country. So I've been really fortunate to be a lot of places and, see a lot of different things and meet a lot of tremendous people over time. And, appreciate you guys having me on to talk about that.
Yeah, Joey's brought that up in the past, and we've all agreed that the level of play at D3 is nothing to sneeze about. I mean, there are some very talented ball players at D3 level.
Yeah, and our leagues had a little bit of attention. We had a stretch of about 3 years where we had 7 or 8 guys that transferred out and went Division One. Certainly everyone knows Duncan Robinson. That's kind of the big name that marks that. But there were 6 or 7 other guys during that time that did the same thing. They obviously didn't all make the NBA, but one went to George Washington from our program, played a couple years, got into the rotation, started a few games on an NIT championship team. Another went to UVM, University of Vermont. I think one went to Hofstra, one went to Maryland. So there was some pretty talented guys playing at pretty high levels that started at Division III for whatever reason. It just maybe the timing or their body grew late or people didn't see them. There's a lot of really good players, and certainly those Potsdam teams in the 80s, you could probably put them up with almost anybody in the country. Even at that time, they were that good.
Coach, that's something with all the D3 coaches that we've had on, D3 players that we've had on, that's something we haven't talked about. Could you explain? Now, I know the rules have changed in the last year now with the transfer portal and all that stuff, but when you went, if you got the ability and the opportunity to jump from D3 to D1, there was no having to sit out a season, was there? Could you start right away?
Yeah. Well, now you can. Now you can start with COVID. That's really taken away that year to sit out in most cases. I think, and I don't know for sure just because we don't deal with it a whole lot, but I think the rule is you get a one-time transfer exception where you don't have to sit out. I don't know what it is. If you try to transfer a second time and you're not a grad transfer, someone else might be able to answer that, but I think you can transfer now and not have to sit out. And that was a result of COVID and all the students losing their years of eligibility because of the seasons just not being played. Before that, though, you still had to sit out. And that was really kind of the big deterrent. Yeah, even Duncan Robinson, his coach left Williams, and that was kind of a driving reason for him to transfer. He had to sit out a year, which for him was great. You get to work out every day at the University of Michigan with their weights and their strengths, and you're playing against high-level guys and get yourself up to the speed of the game. And obviously he did really well there afterwards and put himself in great position to make a lot of money. But yeah, now I think you can make that transfer up and move and not have to sit out. So that's why you see the transfer portal with just so many student athletes in it. More so in basketball and football, because those are the ones that get more recognition, but there's students in every sport doing that. It's just you weren't allowed to in basketball in the past.
It's kind of like the NCAA NCAA's or college's version of free agency.
That's exactly what it is. And kids are going both ways, right? I think Division I, and we've started to see that talking to some of our colleagues at the Division I level, is it's really hard to be a high school student and get a Division I scholarship now. If the Division I program isn't incredibly excited about you, they're going to wait until they can find a 21, 22-year-old that's going to come in and have an impact right away and let you develop for 2 years. So I think, we were talking about how great Division III players are. I think you might see that even get a little bit better here just because of that. Now granted, some of the best ones might transfer out at the end, but I don't think we really know 4, 5, 10 years down the road what that transfer portal is going to look like with this new opening. But in the interim, it's making it really hard for high school seniors to get scholarships at the Division I level.
Yeah, that's interesting, Coach. I would have never thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense, because you would think that top level D3 players now, well, like you said, if they've made a splash at the D3 level by their sophomore season, I mean, D1 coaches have got to be looking like, hey, this guy could step in and help our program for the next 2 years. I'd rather go get this guy than go get a freshman I don't know about.
Yeah, we had a player here. He was a 2020 grad, and he was freshman, rookie of the year in the league, and obviously a pretty competitive league here. And then he was an All-American after that. And every year I would worry if I was going to get a phone call that someone was reaching out about him. And he told me that he had some people reach out, but he was really happy here. And fortunately for us, he wanted to stay and just was really comfortable. But I know that's not always going to be the case. And we're certainly prepared for that in the future at all. I think everyone's got to be prepared for that at every school. You just never know if someone's really good as an underclassman, if they're going to be there for all 4 years. You always hope they are. You're always talking about trying to find the right fit as a student athlete and not just for the basketball team. And you hope you're able to do that, and the students find themselves and find kind of their home away from home on campus. But that's not everybody. Some people want to have that Division I experience.
So, Coach, I did a little reading up on you. You had a fantastic year in 2019, and then COVID hits. And can you tell us exactly how that affected your program, even as far as recruiting?
Yeah, it was tough. We found out basically the middle of October that we weren't going to have a season that year. So it was pretty late for us. So we had a lot of guys, all of our guys had been back on campus except one. And, those guys thought we were going to have a season. They thought this COVID thing was just going to go away. I think like all of us did. So they were, especially the seniors, they were really crushed. At that point, we just lost our season and we didn't do anything basketball wise until the spring semester. And, that was just different. We tried to play pickup a little bit just so they had fun. But for those three seniors, it was really tough. Two of them, one had a job, so he was all set to go. One wanted to get that year back, so he knew he was going to go to grad school. And the other one was on the fence, and he ultimately decided, to get a job, and things worked out for him. But I think for that abruptness, that was just really hard for him. And I think the same thing happened more on a personal level for a lot of the students in the spring of 2020. When you're a senior, you finish your basketball season, all of a sudden, middle of March, you're sent home. You don't get that spring semester after the season where I think they probably have more fun than we as coaches want to know about. And they don't have that senior week and they don't have that in-person graduation. So that, I think for those seniors, that abruptness was really tough. And then the seniors the following year, it was just as tough when the season was out. For us recruiting wise, fortunately, it didn't have too big of an impact. That's one thing that I think has come out of this whole COVID thing is just how many opportunities there are to see student athletes on video, how good coaches, families, AU coaches, high school coaches, parents have become using technology to showcase what they can do. We had in that season where there weren't seasons, we brought in 5 guys. We had 3 guys who we were fortunate to be able to get to campus and talk with and see in person before everything shut down. And then we had 2 guys that we recruited basically off video. So that was different. We normally try not to do that. And you try to get to see everybody in person, and certainly over the phone, you get to know everybody, but it's nice to be able to sit down with a student and his family, whoever comes with him in person on campus, and walk around and get to know them. And with 2 guys, we didn't get that. The first day of orientation was really the first day we got a chance to meet them in person and talk and meet their family. So it was different. And those 2 guys have been great. So it's worked out well, but I could see where that on the front end, I was definitely nervous about that and just not having the relationship in person as far as what we've had in the past with guys. But now moving forward, all these recruiting events that we used to have to go to and be there for hours watching and have to catch games in person. Now, you can pay for the packet and you can essentially watch a games online at home on a live stream. You can go back and watch some of them as replays when you want. So you don't miss much. It's not the same as seeing guys in person for sure. And I think all of us would much rather see guys play in person to get a really good feel, but you can follow up with guys more from a video perspective. And here, just like all the NESCAC, we're fortunate where we get students from all over the country and the world. So sometimes we're just not going to be able to see guys in person. We're going to go out in the region here. Our assistant coach, Sherry Dobbs, was in Boston this weekend. I was down in Atlantic City and then in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So we were able to see a lot of guys. And some of these students were coming from California or Texas, the Southwest. So a lot of students do come to the Northeast. And that's one of the nice things about being in the Northeast is students do travel here. They want to check out the tournaments. They want to check out all the colleges. As you get into New England, as you guys know, feels like every 5 miles there's a college somewhere. So it's just a lot of exposure for them by coming up here. So COVID helped in that way, I think.
Well, that was my next question. Follow-up is how far out of your area do you recruit people? Because the SUNY they try to stay within the region, and there's not much to choose from, not much to draw them in. But how does that affect you, and how far out of your region do you go?
Yeah, we'll recruit anybody from anywhere if they're interested and they have the academics and they're able to figure out how the cost is going to work for them and their family. But from a travel perspective, we really don't go any further than DC and Northern Virginia. We kind of go Pittsburgh, DC, Northern Virginia, Jersey, New York City, up to Boston. That's about as far as we'll travel and see guys in person. And we're fortunate, like I said, a lot of student athletes come to the Northeast for camps. One of the big things for us at our level in our league is going to an Ivy League camp or a Patriot League camp where they have these 1-day or 2-day showcases at those colleges and universities where you assume a lot of the students there are pretty strong academically already. It was a big change going from Oswego where you knew your boundaries pretty much geographically, and everybody was always recruiting the same guys. So you had to find a way to be really good. And there weren't many secrets out there, where now in the NESCAC, you might be able to find somebody that no one else knows who's in the middle of nowhere that for some reason their high school English teacher went to Hamilton and has talked about Hamilton for years and they just love it. And they don't play on an AU team or they don't have a lot of exposure. All of a sudden they pop up. There's not as many of those now as what there were 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but they're certainly still out there. So they're both good and they both have a lot of positives. It's just, they're a little bit different. So I know right now our admissions office would love to find somebody from North Dakota or Wyoming or Idaho and just check off that 50th state for us here in our enrollment on campus. So if you have any connections, send them our way.
Never know.
Yeah, that's right.
So Coach, you must have had a little taste of this, a little experience, because I would assume trying to get kids to Clarkson to play basketball is kind of the same situation you're at Hamilton.
Yeah, the same mindset. Geographically, we're in a little different situation than the rest of the league. We get a lot of interest from students in New England just because of the league name, but when push comes to shove, they just feel it's a little bit farther. So we do have guys from all over the country, and we've tried to really unturn some rocks and maybe find some different guys or use some different paths to find student athletes. We have guys from Texas. We have a couple from California, Los Angeles, San Francisco, one from North Carolina, then certainly the Northeast corridor. But definitely geography for us is different. The nice thing is, being in New York, our NESCAC peers don't really come to New York State as much for student athletes, especially upstate New York. So we do have a chance to compete for them, not against NESCAC schools, but there's a lot of other great schools along the thruway. So that's a little bit trickier, just finding the right mix there. But we definitely try to avoid most of our peers and try to find the student athletes that are looking at different options. And that was similar to Clarkson. We really tried to find guys from New York City as much as we possibly could. Tried to get them up to the North Country, and we had a great group of guys. And I think the biggest selling point for us, everyone knew about the business degree and obviously the engineering, but the biggest selling point were the guys that we had in that program. And they just really recruited the guys that ended up coming and helped us move forward over the 5 years there.
So Coach Dobbs being on staff now, how has that impacted you? It must be nice. I'm going to assume that the two of you coached against each other when he was at Potsdam, you were at Clarkson.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah,
it's been great. He's run his own program for a long time. So, I don't have to be on top of a lot of things, which is nice. I know that probably sounds bad, but just makes it a little bit easier. And, I can trust him going out and seeing a guy and evaluating a guy and knowing if he's going to be a really good fit. So it's been great for us. He's fantastic with the guys in our program. They love him. He does a lot more of the small group and individual workouts than I do. So he gets a chance to really connect with them. And that's been great because they just respond to him really well. And, obviously having been a head coach and a little bit more mature, he can have a conversation with a booster, an alum. He can have a conversation with a parent. He's great on recruits. And I think with us both being older, he understands just how many phone calls have to be made to try to get recruits, where I think sometimes the younger guys, they weren't young when they had to make 1,000 calls a week just to attract recruits, where I think Coach Dobbs, Sherry knows that and is great at that. So it's been great having him around.
Totally get that. Randy Todd, my neighbor, longtime foe at Rush and Moira, has been with me for 3 years, and it is, I can't tell you what a savior he is to have a fellow varsity coach who knows exactly what coaching high school basketball is all about. It's just different. He can take a portion of practice. He can do the same things that you're talking about. If I good cop, bad cop, hey, I don't want to deal with this parent. Can you go butter her up? He knows he can do that. So, it's great. And so that's why when I saw that Coach Dobbs was with you, I figured that's got to be a great tandem, great pairing for you.
Well, I just think, and you've probably seen the same thing, after you've been a head coach, you just think a little bit differently than when you're an assistant, I know I was this way when I was an assistant young. I thought I knew everything and had all the answers. And then once you get to be a head coach and you get knocked around a little bit, you realize you don't have all the answers. So you've got to think a little bit longer and broader than what you might have when you're an assistant and you knew it all. And him having that experience is great. So it makes it a lot easier. And, nice thing is he's coached his teams a certain way and we coach ours a certain way. So he's got a perspective and coming from a different angle where even in game situations, he looks at things a little bit differently than I do. So it's great to have someone to bounce ideas off. And, there's been a bunch of times where he's had great suggestions that have changed the flow of the game and helped us take steps forward. So it's just such a different perspective. It's great to have.
Good. Coach Tobin Anderson, been trying to get him on. We've been talking with him. Was he directly after you?
No, it's the other way. I've actually, I was directly behind Tobin twice.
Okay.
So I'm not going to stack. I know that. So did that twice, but yeah, Tobin, did a great job at Clarkson. I think got him tied for first place, maybe the year before I got there, and then moved to Hamilton, took over the job. And for 2 years, we crossed over, or for 5 years, we crossed over when I was at Clarkson and he was at Hamilton. And then he was at Hamilton for 2 more years when I was at Oswego, and then he moved on to Siena. And then he's been at St. Thomas Aquinas for a while. But when he left Hamilton, that's when I left Oswego and went to go to Hamilton. So I was able to follow him twice. And, it's hard. Tobin's a great coach and has a ton of energy, and, they press and they run and they have a great style. And, it's always hard to follow up someone who's won a lot. So that's always a challenge for a coach coming in. And, especially at Clarkson, because he had done a great job. And I think he had more wins or higher winning percentage than anybody in the history of the program when he left. So that was a tough challenge, especially a couple guys went with him to Hamilton. So that made it a little bit harder as well from a talent perspective. But we were able to get moving forward. And then, obviously here, he did a great job in the Liberty League. And right around the year he left was also the last year that Hamilton College participated in the Liberty League, and we moved back to NESCAC. So the history of that is, Hamilton College is a founding member of the NESCAC with schools like Williams, Amherst, Tufts, Middlebury, all throughout New England. And we had competed in a lot of sports, full schedules in the NESCAC. And then for about a dozen-year stretch, we didn't compete in 7 of our team sports in the NESCAC. We competed in the UCAA, which then became the Liberty League. The year I got here and the year after Tobin left, that was the first year all of our sports were back in the NESCAC. So it was an interesting couple of years there, just seeing the level of play and working our way to be competitive at that level. We had a national championship team in women's lacrosse coming from the Liberty League at Hamilton. So we'd had some pretty good success in the other sports as well, but the NESCAC's a whole different beast. So it was kind of fun to see us start kind of at ground zero a little bit and work our way up over the few years in the NESCAC, getting the chance to play against nationally competitive programs every year. We had, I don't remember if it was my second or third year here, but we played Amherst at home and we played really well. I think we were 500 that year, but we played really well in the game. And we had, came down to a 1 possession game and they ended up winning by 2 or 4, I think, with the final score. They went on to win the national championship, and that was that was a regular season game in January, and we're fighting like crazy to get a win, and they're rolling out there and going on to win the whole thing a couple months later. So it just, like we were talking before, the level of play is just so high. It's just fun to see the talent that's here.
Well, since you're on that topic, talk a little bit about your conference, because the one thing I noticed, so you guys only play everybody once and not twice. So how does that, number one, for your scheduling, how's that impact your scheduling and how you do things? Do you guys have a season-ending tournament, and does that tournament determine who gets in?
Yes. Yeah. So we get a lot of flack for only playing everybody once. So we do play everybody once. There's 11 teams. So we'll play everybody else one time, which is 10 of our games for the regular season. The NESCAC does have some other restrictions. We can only schedule 14 other games for a total of 24, where most Division III schools can schedule 25. And then with that 24, we're also not allowed any scrimmages. Where the NCAA rules are 25 regular season games plus 2 scrimmages. So when we typically start a regular season, we're starting to play games, we're probably 3-4 games behind our opponents, or at the very least two games and 2 scrimmages that they've already had and we haven't. So scheduling is a little interesting because you want to make sure you get off on the right foot. So it's always a challenge of getting that first weekend of games or that first game at a time where you've had enough opportunity to prepare and really feel like you can compete against a team that's got 3-4 live opportunities ahead of you. And then certainly for us, going back to the geography, there's a lot of schools in New York, but there's not as many as there are in New England. So for us trying to find those other 14 games, it does get a little interesting, especially because we're not able to get all 14 games in before winter break. So we've got to find a way to get 3, 4, 5 games after we come back from the Christmas holiday and in January and February. And, those who follow the SUNYAC or the Liberty League, they're in conference play at that point. So there's a lot of Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday games. They don't want to play another game on a Tuesday or a Monday. So it does get interesting with that. But it is nice with the league. We know for 8 straight weekends, that's league play. We'll play a lot of Friday, Saturdays. So we got 4 league weekends with Friday night, Saturday afternoon, and league play. We've got one Saturday week, one Sunday or Friday week. And then our league tournament prior to COVID has been 8 teams make the playoff. So it's unique in one way where our quarterfinal games, 1 hosts 8, 2 through 7, all the way down through those 4 games are all held at the higher seed on a Saturday. And then we've got a full week to prepare for the semifinals and finals the following weekend at the top seed. Where I know when I was in the Liberty League, it was a 4-team tournament and you played Friday, Saturday. And I just always felt, it just makes more sense for 6 or 8 teams to be in the tournament. I mean, these student athletes, they're not going pro. So let's give them the opportunity to experience that playoff atmosphere, whether it's home or on the road. I've always said I would much rather drive to Colby 6 hours away and play a playoff game instead of playing some random Tuesday game in December. Just the atmosphere and the experience for the students just is a lot more fun for them at that time of the year. So having 8 teams in our playoff, it's been great to have. I think one of the things the league did really well around COVID is they put everybody in, because some teams missed some games, some teams were back and forth with their schedule. So they put all 11 teams in and made it a Friday first round game, 6-11, 7-10, 8-9. And then Sunday were the quarterfinal games. And then the following weekend were semis and finals. So it'd be fun to do every year, but I don't know if we could pull that off academically, but it's been fun to be in the league. The winner of our tournament does make the NCAA tournament with the automatic qualifier, but we've been really fortunate to have a lot of teams ranked pretty highly with their regional rankings. And we've had a year where we've had 5 teams make the tournament. We've had a couple of years with 3 and 4 make it, which is at this level, not like Division I, this level, that's a lot of teams making it, where you might hear about the Big Ten or the ACC get 9 or 10. At Division III, if you get 3, that's a lot. And we've been really fortunate to have 4 or 5. The anti-NESCAC people would say that's because we only play each other once and we don't beat each other up in the second round. So I certainly hear that. And I understand that, but since I'm in the NESCAC, I'm going to say we're pretty good. So it's all the sides of the road you're sitting on.
I was just thinking that, Coach. I was like, well, is it because you're not beating each other up in adding losses to your own teams because you're out there, you got 14 non-league games that you can go schedule. Yeah. So I was wondering that, but hey.
It could be. Yeah. And who knows, it might help ourselves too, because if you're playing other teams with good records and the top 4 or 5 separate themselves, maybe they're that much stronger. I do think, and I'm not on the regional ranking committee anymore. Maybe Coach Leone or Coach Spann might know this if they're on it. But I do think the NCAA now is putting more weight on who you schedule out of conference. I think they've shifted some of the metrics of that as far as their regional ranking equation or whatever parameters they use. I think they put more weight on who you're scheduling. So you can't just schedule teams that might win 1 out of 4, that you've got to have some competitiveness there. And they're going to look at that more seriously. So, but it's fun. The league's great. There's been a lot of great teams. And if you're competitive it's a lot of fun. It just keeps you on your toes. And, every year you might play somebody that could be playing in the Final Four. And for us, we had a couple of years where we made the Sweet 16 and, we weren't first in our league. We were tied for first in the regular season, but we didn't win our tournament. And we got in as at-large. And we're playing in the NCAA, and we're playing some great teams, but they weren't any different or any better than 6 or 7 teams we played in league play. So I think that competition really helped us be prepared to go on the road and compete against a York College or compete against Springfield, who went to the Final Four, some teams that were battle-tested, had some great players. Not to mention Nazareth, who's always good, or Penn State Barron, who's always good. Certainly Christopher Newport, top 10, top 5 program in the country every year. I don't think our guys were intimidated in those games, which was fun. So it made great atmospheres, which is, those are the memories that the guys are going to remember. They'll probably remember the results too, but they'll remember walking into Bundy Fieldhouse and seeing 1,800 people and having it packed, and just seeing their buddies and just having great visions of that night. Not too different. And I probably shouldn't bring this up as a Hamilton coach, but not too different than when Potsdam came to Hamilton in '91 and we were undefeated and Potsdam won that ECAC championship game. I mean, I remember being there with my dad, and that place was packed. Not a very happy place at the time, other than a small section behind the bench, Potsdam, but another, I remember that atmosphere more than I remember some of the plays from the game, just how great it was and how competitive and how energetic it was in the field house.
Dave, you got something?
Go ahead.
Okay. So Coach, it's funny you bring that up. So explain a little bit, because obviously this is a long time ago. We were all really young when this happened, but it seems to me like I remember this. Jerry didn't make the NCAAs that year. That was like one of the first years in forever. So the ECAC tournament was like the Northeastern's version of the NIT to the NCAA Division III tournament. But Hamilton Hamilton couldn't play in the tournament or something. Weren't they like number one and undefeated?
Yeah, it was crazy. That was another NESCAC rule. As NESCAC teams, weren't allowed to participate in the NCAA tournament up until I think 1994. So there were a lot of teams in the league, Williams, Amherst, Tufts, Middlebury, a lot of teams throughout the years, Hamilton included, that had great teams that were number one in the country, but didn't get a chance to play in the NCAA tournament. And that was one of those years in 91. And I think at the time, and I don't know if I'm 100% right, but I think at the time there might've been only 48 teams in the NCAA tournament. So when you were talking about teams just missing the NCAA tournament, there were really good teams. I mean, there were 20-win teams coming out of SUNYAC. There were some great teams at that point. So the ECAC at that time was a 1-week tournament. And, Hamilton was in it because it really didn't impact classes too much, where an NCAA tournament would be 3 weekends potentially. So that 1 week of competition was allowed by the school and the league. And it was 8 teams, and they were all really good. So to win that at that time was a great thing. And, Hamilton was in it a lot of years just because we couldn't participate in the NCAA tournament. I know some of the more veteran guys from the 80s in our program, they talk about being number one in the country and, playing, I think, Scranton at the time, maybe mid 80s, and beating them by 25 and feeling like it wasn't that competitive a game. Probably was, but, it's our perspective. So I'm going to take their point of view. And then Scranton went and won the national championships. And, it's just interesting how that worked at the time. But yeah, and that was a culmination of that. Hamilton was 26-0, number one in the country, had a bunch of, press on CBS Sports at the time, and the evening news and things like that we all used to watch when we were younger. And Potsdam came in and won the big game, and I think kept them from being the next undefeated team in New York State, if I remember right. I think Potsdam's still the last one to do that. But it made for some great basketball, where you think the NCAA is the pinnacle of the season as far as competitiveness. But there were some really good ECAC tournaments back then. And now, now that the NCAA tournament's gone to 64, you really don't see the ECAC tournament have as much prestige or power, because the records are a little bit lower because more teams are in the NCAA field. It's just like most things, it's changed over time.
I gotta be honest, I didn't even know that they still did the ECAC. So they still do.
They still do. Yeah. It's less in New York State. You'll see a good number of teams from Pennsylvania. You'll see a handful from the Metro New York area, the old Atlantic regions. I don't remember this year. I don't remember if it was 8 or 12 teams, but they had a field that was pretty competitive. Everyone had to be over 500, and you had some pretty good teams in it. But a lot of the New York State schools have chosen not to participate in it for quite a while. That's probably close to 10, 15 years. I know what year was it? It was 2007 at Clarkson. We were in the ECAC tournament. And I think that was the last year that at the time we were going to be allowed to participate in the ECAC. So it's been 12 to 15 years where New York's really slowed down with it, which is too bad, because it'd be great for the student athletes to get a couple more games. You get that senior who just misses out, maybe they're number one seed and they don't quite win the tournament and don't get in, to have a chance to play for something at the end would be a lot of fun. I know at Penn State Barron, my one year, we were the number one seed, and we got knocked out in the tournament, and we had a chance to go play in the ECAC tournament, which was not what you wanted, but it was a nice follow up to having a great season, to have a chance to compete against some other good teams and still get a chance to play for another title.
It's something like the big tournament for D1, and if you don't make it, you get the NIT to fall back on. So
yep.
Yeah, that is a shame that they didn't have something that they could bounce back on. Yeah.
And I think the NCAA is hurting for money, so I don't think they can afford it for us anymore. But so because that unfortunately that wasn't funded by the NCAA like the tournament was. It would have made sense to do it, but it just is the way it is.
Right.
So I'm curious, with your schedule the way it is, you have, so with 14 non-conference games, have you developed any non-conference rivalries with schools that you play year after year, and it's kind of built into a pretty good rivalry?
Yeah, I think for us, the two local schools we've played the most, SUNY Poly, the old SUNY IT, we play them every year, and we play Utica College. So those are great. They're both within 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Outside of those two, we really haven't played teams consistently year to year. Those have been the two every year. We play one at home, one away, so it just balances out. It's easy trips. We've had some great games with SUNY Poly. I know one year we were over there and we were up one, and they had a free throw and they missed a free throw and got the offensive rebound, and they threw it up and it looked like it was going in. It didn't. And we escaped with that. So we've had some great games with them, and they've had some really good players. They have a couple All-Americans there. David Golombiowski was a heck of a player and an All-American there. Josh Gregory's coming off a really great run here the last few years for them. So they're one that we play. And then Utica College, that's a tradition that we've had for a long time. Even when they were back Division I in the 80s, I know Hamilton was playing them, and we've got some pictures here on campus in different places of some of those games, and seeing both coaches rather intense at the time on the sidelines. And Coach Coffey's done a great job with them, and they've actually beaten us 2 years in a row. So I think that's one of the games we have circled a little darker than some of the other games, is try to get them back a little bit. But they've got a great team, and last year they were one of those teams we're talking about with the ECACs, where I think they might have won 23 games, 23-5 or 23-4, but didn't get to the NCAA tournament. And there's a team that would have probably loved to play in the ECAC and have a chance to win a few more games. But outside of that, we've played Morrisville regularly. Joe Smith is a Hamilton alum, really great player here, graduated in 2004 and has done a great job with that program. We've played them quite a bit. And then other than that, we try to play different people.
Right.
We try to get to some tournaments in different areas. We've been really fortunate. We've gone to Los Angeles, played a couple games out there. This year we're going to Texas. We have two seniors, one from Houston, one from Austin. So we're going to go down. We're going to play 2 games outside of Austin, just north of Austin in Georgetown, and then 1 game a little bit outside of San Antonio, and take the whole week of Thanksgiving and give the guys a great trip to go down there and have some fun. And they don't mind giving up their whole Thanksgiving if we're somewhere warm and nice like LA or San Antonio. If we were going to Utica or staying in Clinton, I think they'd probably be a little more opposed, but having the flexibility to have 14 games, non-conference, has allowed us to do some fun things like that, where we try to get as much as we can to play a game at least close to the guy's hometown at least once during their 4 years.
Nice.
But with the way our rosters changed in 20 years, or 20 years ago, we were like everybody. We had everybody from the thruway pretty much, with 1 or 2 guys outside the area. Now we hardly have any guys from New York State. It's really everyone outside the area. So it makes it a little bit tougher just to try to get to everybody's hometown, but something we try to do. We had done that when I was an assistant at Canisius, and I thought that was a really neat thing and something we tried to do. And, fortunately, our alums and our department have been supportive of trying to do that as much as possible. And then we try to play some really good teams on our schedule that we think are going to win their league and try to help us get ready for NESCAC play. We try to play some teams that we feel, not that we can guarantee this or know this, but we try to play some teams that we feel like we're going to be able to get a win and try to help our record a little bit. And then we're probably going to have anywhere from 3 to 8 games that if we're going to be good, we probably need to win. And if we're not going to be good, we're probably going to have a tough time. So, we have a couple heavy hitters in there and a couple that aren't as heavy. And then those swing games really determine what our record is going to be going into the conference schedule. And, breaking down the numbers in our league, playing 14 league games, there haven't been many teams who've been less than 11-3 non-conference that have made the NCAA tournament out of our league, just because you're probably going to take some lumps in the league. So we've got to find a way to be successful non-conference where I think sometimes our freshmen come in and they feel like it's a random game on a Tuesday in November and they don't think it really matters. But when push comes to shove and they're looking at those formulas on the regional ranking committee, that win is pretty important to get and needs our full attention. So sometimes that's a learning process for our young guys, but for the most part, our guys understand that. But there's definitely an art to it, and I have not figured it out. I wish we could better. But
yeah, and you definitely need all those different types of games. You know, you need the games against the the better opponents to see if you can elevate your game, and you need the games that are confidence boosters for your players. And
yep.
then, like you said, the ones that you're not sure of, those are the ones that show when it's down and dirty how your guys are going to react and how, you know, if they can pull out a win against a equally competitive team.
Yeah, and it's harder and harder to figure out ahead of time who's going to be what. You know,
right.
with that transfer portal, you know, we scheduled a trip to Ohio last year, and we knew we were playing two good teams, Baldwin Wallace and Case Western, and you know they were both good, and I thought they were both going to be high-end teams for us. Well, Case Western gets 2 or 3 grad transfers, and that takes them from very good to unbelievably good, and just kind of changes that perspective a little bit. And I know we had one year where we had some teams scheduled that I thought were going to be pretty good at the top of their league, and they finished in the bottom half of their league. So it just, you never really know for sure. You hope, you try to figure it out. But I do think the transfer portal and some of that movement now we're seeing does impact some of those predictions a little bit. But at the end of the day, you got to go out and win the games, right? That's what it comes down to. You got to do enough on your own end to make sure you're ready to compete, no matter who you're playing or where you're playing. I do think it's nice. We've tried to schedule more away games than home games, just because I think that atmosphere is going to bring you more adversity and try to help us get ready, because it's really hard to put yourself in position to play at home through the NESCAC or through the NCAA tournament. And you're definitely going to have to win some tough road games at some point. So why not try to figure out what that looks like earlier in the year instead of waiting until it actually happens? So I think we've taken on some pretty good teams on the road, and you know, the trips to LA and Texas certainly contributed to that, but we've played some pretty good opponents and in hostile atmospheres, and that gets us ready, I think.
So speaking of home and away, with your conference schedule, do you play 5 and 5, 5 home and 5 away, or can it work out that way?
Yeah, most years it's going to be 5 and 5. Every year, just because we have 11, there's probably going to be anywhere from 1 to 3 teams that play 6 and 4, but it's a 2-year cycle. So over the 2 years, you're 10 and 10. You know, so it really balances out. So for us, you know, we do a lot with travel partners. Bowdoin and Colby up in Maine have been they've been travel partners the whole time we've been back in the league. They're both around 6 hours away. So most guys who graduate from Hamilton will play 2 years at Maine and have them come to us 2 years. So it's not an every year thing, which is nice. So it makes sense over the long run. One of our groups, our 2018 seniors, just the way the 2-year travel schedules worked out, they went to Maine 3 times. So you just never know, because it's a 2-year cycle. Then they were on the front end. Yeah, whatever it was, they had 3 years going to Maine, but I'm not going to try to remember that far back, but they laughed at it and it worked out. You know, we ended up having a couple road wins, and that helped us in the long run for seeding in the NCAA tournament.
And when I played, it was always, you know, home or road. It didn't matter. You're just playing ball.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, so classy, Coach, that you do that for your kids, try to get them back to their home area and play. That was a classic. Dean Smith used to do that. It seems like North Carolina used to go play. I think Tom Izzo might try to do that every now and again. But I just remember as a kid growing up, you'd see North Carolina footage one night in a small gym on the road somewhere. And it just didn't, you know, like, why are they doing that? I know Coach Boeheim took Jerry back to play in Scranton, but I think they played Canisius in Scranton. It wasn't
maybe.
I just think they scheduled a non-league game in the Scranton area for Jerry Mack. But
I remember stories of trucks of people and busloads of people coming from Scranton to all the Carrier Dome games. So he almost had a home game all the time anyway. So it wasn't that far of a trip.
I was at his final regular season home game. I ordered the tickets the day they went on sale, and my little boy and my wife and I sat pretty much on the roof. We were top row. It was crazy. So yeah, that was like the only time I've ever been in the Dome with 33,000 And they were literally in there. They were in there for him. So
I'm sure it was cool. I'm sure it was loud as can be, knowing his fans. Yeah.
It was a great experience. So, well, Coach, we want to thank you for coming on. This has been a great, good, informative show too. And, it's good to know we got 2 North Country connections with you at Hamilton. We also got an opponent of yours is a Section 10 boy, Canton alum Declan Porter, playing at Williams. So we got a couple of reasons to keep an eye on the NESCAC conference. And we will try to do that this season for sure. I will see Steve Babiars on August 2nd. He'll be up here. We have a little gathering every year. Jerry gets most of his players together. Well, as much as they can. And somehow I've been invited to that. I get to go every year. It's the coolest thing. I get to go play golf and listen to old Potsdam State Bears stories. So I'll see Steve and let him know that you were talking trash about him.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he's great. He's fun. Like I said, there's that group that gets together and plays, and he's one of them. And, he would be out there playing for 3 hours if the other guys, I don't think the other guys can keep up with him. So he's a good one. Where do you guys get to play golf? What course are you at?
Last year we played SLU. I don't know. It's usually SLU, Partridge, or Potsdam, but whatever they decide. But I'm just happy to be included, and I get to hear the stories afterwards. And Jerry always buys everybody a drink and calls and talks to every one of them. It's just really cool. So,
and he's got that memory where he just remembers everybody. It always amazes me seeing him randomly at the Final Four, just how well he remembers people's names and stories. And I wish I had a mind like that. I can't remember half the shit he does, but he just, man, that's good for him. I wish, but it's a credit to him how well he keeps track of everybody and stays in touch with everybody. In this day and age, that's a hard thing to do, especially as many places as he's been, between being at Duke and Potsdam and Iona. That's a lot of people to stay in contact with.
Well, Coach, before Pete signs off, just you bringing that up, I don't know if you're aware, but there's a documentary coming out very soon that a local kid, his name is Francesco Palumbo. We actually had him on our show, that he is just finishing up the final touches on what looks like is going to be just an outstanding documentary about Jerry's time with the Potsdam State Bears.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah, so you're definitely going to want to take a peek at that.
Yeah, the Bodacious Bears is the name of it.
That's great.
There's a trailer online on YouTube.
Okay.
And I tell you, don't watch the trailer because it's just going to make you want to watch more.
Yeah. You're sitting at the edge of your seat and 6 minutes goes by and you're going, that's it? Yeah. When you feel the hunger for more, but unfortunately, it was only I think 6 minutes and 10 seconds or something.
Something like that. 6 minutes.
Oh, that'll be awesome. Yeah, especially the number of people at that time. You had so many student athletes there that were regional, so it's just going to embrace an incredibly large community. It'll be fun to see because those are some heck of a great teams through that run, especially early mid 80s. Those were fun to watch.
We were there. So we
were.
This has been a quick hour. But we appreciate you coming on the show, and like Joe said, we're gonna follow you through the year, and we wish you nothing but the best.
Yeah, well, thanks. This was, like I said before, it was a lot of fun. Just brought back some old memories, some fun ones, and just thinking about some names and talking about some people that I hadn't seen in a while. And it's nice now getting to see Babiars randomly here and hear some of the stories again from the North Country and Potsdam Clarkson. So this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you guys reaching out. And even though my wife said they've gotten to the bottom of the barrel now that they're so far in, they reach out to you. I said, I don't care. I'm excited about it. Looking forward. We'll have fun and getting ready for it was a lot of fun just to relive some of the memories. So I really appreciate the opportunity to do it.
Hey, Coach, in your defense, I've had your name on my list a long time. All right. I didn't just write it down. I've had it on there for a long time. I just finally got around to it.
No, this is great. I appreciate the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun. And like I said, the large part of the fun was getting ready for it and then listening to some of the podcasts and hearing other people, Jeff Robinson. I remember Jeff playing back at Sackett's and hearing about him scoring 60 or 70 points in a high school game and just remember that gym. And so it's been fun just to reconnect a little bit to some people I haven't talked to in a while.
Sounds good. Well, thanks a lot again, Coach, for coming on.
Great. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
That's going to be it here tonight on ESS, Empire State Sports, and the Wise Guys Sports Talk Show for your hosts, Joey, Dave, and myself, Pete Goslaw, and our very special guest, Adam Stockwell. Good night, everybody, and stay safe.